Family disputes can make us feel isolated and vulnerable. Maybe you're going through a divorce or a legal dispute about your kids. Perhaps you've spent hours on Google or have even posted anonymously on Facebook to see what others have to say. But are you getting the actual information and support that you're looking for? Our podcast, Legal Lounge, aims to dispel misinformation and downright bad legal information to empower anyone with questions about their family, their children, their finances, their marriage, and the law. As a team focused exclusively on family law matters, we aim to help listeners not only with the information they need, but also with the hope that their situation has a solution. Short disclaimer, please note this podcast is for educational purposes only, and the information should not be relied upon as legal advice or for legal purposes.
Welcome back to the Legal Lounge. Today we have a wonderful guest that you may not think would join us here in the Legal Lounge. We have a matchmaker. Laurie, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm Laurie Berzack and I own Carolinas Matchmaker. So I have been a professional matchmaker for almost 19 years. And I service men and women in the Carolinas who are looking to find love and the real deal. And it's absolutely a fascinating business.
Kind of a secret for the listener to learn here and now. Laurie and I actually connected a number of years ago when I was still single myself because I wanted to learn more about matchmaking services. Because honestly, I didn't really know what that meant. And in a world where a lot of people are matching online or using the online dating apps, tell us a little bit more about what a matchmaker does.
People are hiring me. And then I have a very large database of people who have kind of what I like to say, threw their hat in the ring. So they fill out a profile on my website, carolinasmatchmaker.com. And then I am able to sort through all of the different people who have done so and determine based on what my client is looking for, who would be a potential match based on all of those folks. And sometimes obviously I'm also out there recruiting and people are sending their friends my way. So huge wide net to help my client find their perfect person. But what I'm looking for isn't just physicality because, everybody wants to feel that big spark. And listen, granted, I understand, but everything else needs to be there as well in order for it to be a long-lasting match. So core values, faith, politics comes into play a lot of times nowadays, interests, and then also, do they want to have kids? Are they okay with somebody who has kids already? So basically, I'm essentially sort of going through those first 3 months of dating, all those questions that you don't want to ask because, you don't want to turn the person off or get too far ahead in the relationship, on the first date. So I ask all those deep questions ahead and then determine if that person is a great match for my client and vice versa. And then I set it up and it's a blind date.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
So these individuals don't really know much about each other when they go in person, I presume, to this blind date.
Yeah, in person. Yes. It's a rare day that I hear, I couldn't even stand to look at his face. Because the thing is that, first of all, the people, that hire me are very socially adept, attractive. Nobody's perfect, but they're good looking enough people that really and because people are always kind of concerned about that point. So what I do is I ask to see, photos of people that they've dated in the past to make sure I'm kind of on track. And that's not really the issue because online dating is all about the physicality. But when you go to a matchmaker, it's about so much more than just that. Everything that I listed. So when all those things are there, people have a much, much greater chance of being successful. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I had a call with a woman yesterday who was thinking about hiring me for matchmaking. And she said to me, listen, I only like to date 6 foot and taller, this, that, and the other. And I was like, oh boy, I don't know that I want to take her on as a matchmaking client, but she's really great. And what I might want to do is introduce her to one of my clients who is fabulous. And so I said to her, listen, I've got a great guy for you and I'd love for you to meet him. The only thing is he's 5'8", but he's got this, that, and the other, and the other, and the other, and the other, and he's successful and he's cute and, he's got great relationships with his friends and family and he loves to host and he's international travel. Of course she said yes.
Yeah.
She's going to meet my client and you know what? I bet you it's a match. sometimes people think in their head, he needs to be 6 foot or taller or whatever it is and have these really strong parameters. But in actuality, that's not what really makes a great relationship. It's everything else.
Sure, it sure does. What would you say you've seen change over the years as a matchmaker since you have been doing this for about 19 years?
Well, I do think that the online dating apps has made like a huge difference in my industry. And listen, for a long time, I've helped people with the dating apps. But I've recently gotten back to just my core mission, which is just the matchmaking. I just think it's a lot more fun. I think that people are just exhausted from online dating and they're not actually meeting the people most of the time. So when you hire me, you actually get in front of wonderful people. And, everybody's on the app. So most likely you might have even been on the app at the same time. But with all the gatekeeping that the apps do, and their algorithms, you may not have even seen them, or if you did, maybe it was a bad picture, or maybe one of them swiped left and you never got a chance to actually interact. So the beauty of obviously with the matchmaking is you actually get to meet people. But I think that what changed in the industry from like the olden days is that, think about it, in the past and not so distant past, you lived in a town, oftentimes small towns, and there were just a number of individuals who were potential mates for you, and you choose one of them. It's like, okay, there are 10 eligible men. I choose him. He chooses me. Let's get married, have kids, and live out the rest of our days. But then the internet happened and online dating, and all of a sudden you can meet people in other cities, and all of a sudden you could choose what you're looking for in terms of the height and it used to be the weight, and it used to be financials, like I want a man that makes over 150K, whatever it is. So people started thinking that was the highest priority, like we talked about before. But also it started to become that idea of what's behind door number 1, 2, 3, 4. Could I get anyone better than this one? She's hotter, so I'm going to say no to that one, even though she is more of like my type. Maybe I can do better. Everybody thought that just because they were on the same platform with each other, that they could potentially date each other. And that is absolutely not the case, as we all know. It just doesn't happen that way. So I think that whole plenty, concept is what has kind of destroyed dating a little bit. It's the same thing with TV. And, it used to be, all right, there's 4 channels, 3 channels, and you pick one of them and you watch whatever's on it. Now it's like there's so many things. Half the time we're like, there's nothing on TV for me right now. I can't find anything to watch. Yeah. It's like there's so much to watch. So I think that the online dating sites have given people the illusion that there's so many out there that it gets a little overwhelming.
Oh, I can relate to that personally. It's about information overload and then app fatigue. And I believe that's why I actually reached out to you, because I had been on the apps for, oh goodness, a number of years. Yeah. And you're right. Things may seem nice and you may get a few friends from those online apps, but in terms of finding someone with a meeting of those core values and other items that are actually indicative of a sustainable relationship, a marriage at that, I mean, I felt like I was trying to look for a needle in a moving haystack that was in different cities.
Yeah, exactly. So I think people are starting to trend more towards old-fashioned values and hiring matchmakers.
Yeah, well, and that's why you're here today, because I feel like a matchmaker and a family law attorney have a lot more in common than the listener may otherwise think. Yeah. So one thing that I have found difficult, especially on the apps, is the development of different communication skills. Because when you are behind a phone or a screen, or you're not in person, people tend to say things or do things that they wouldn't do if they were in person.
Yes.
What would you say are some of the things you look for in terms of communication skills when you're working with clients?
Number one, I think that texting gives people the illusion that you are closer than you really are, in terms of like you're further along in the relationship than you are. So it kind of devolves often, like good morning, what you up to, that kind of thing, when you don't know the other person. So I think that there needs to be a lot more work that goes into the relationship before you get too comfortable in your communication skills. And people are dummies and send, sexting and things like that way too soon. I mean, it's one thing if you're in a relationship and that's kind of something that you like to do with each other. But it's another thing to get a full frontal from somebody that you've been on 2 dates with when you haven't even asked for it. And it's a huge turnoff. What's interesting is men are so visual that's the kind of thing that turns them on, but women, not so much. Women are usually like, oh boy, that is not at all what I was looking for whatsoever. So I think in terms of communication, it's important to get on a phone call. I know that sounds so old fashioned, but some people don't like to talk on the phone. But, ask the person, how do you like to communicate? And that works, in the beginning as well as throughout your entire relationship. Some people come home and they need to just sit quietly and just be by themselves and not talk to anyone. Other times people come in and they're like, I want company. I want to talk to you. Tell me about your whole day. So you need to learn the other person's communication style. Do they want to be reached out to every day? In the beginning, it's too much. It's every other day, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's exactly right to be reaching out every single day. I mean, I know that when I met my husband and we first started dating, he called me every day. That's just what happened. And I was like, good. It would be weird for him to have not called me one day. But other times people are like, this feels like too much too soon. So you need to pace yourself in the beginning of any relationship. And then throughout it, you need to really listen to your partner about what they're looking for and check in, even in a marriage. Last night, I looked at my husband and I said, tell me something interesting about your day that you weren't expecting. And he looked at me and he's like, great question. And I was like, man, I nailed it tonight, didn't I? It just took like 2 minutes for me. And I found out something that I wouldn't have heard if I hadn't asked that question. So I think that in any relationship, you need to keep building. You need to constantly think of new ways to get excited and ask those deep questions and continue to sort of unravel. Because I think that people get too sedentary in their relationships and they get bored and they stop trying.
Yeah. And I can definitely relate. Actually, I kind of giggled earlier when you talked about the full frontal visuals. When I was dating a number of years ago, those types of pictures would come up in girlfriend conversation. So, I'd be there with a bunch of my girlfriends having a glass of wine, and one of my friends would be like, hey, here are the most recent full frontals I got from these guys I'm going out with. And all of us would pass them around and kind of laugh about it. And, in a way I felt bad because I knew that to an extent, maybe those guys were interested in my friend. But on the flip side, my friend would be like, obviously this is a no-go because I would never be attracted to someone who sends these types of photos.
Yeah.
And it's so for purposes of communication, to your exact point, it's okay. I know you may feel comfortable sending that picture, but it's not about you. It's actually about the person you're trying to communicate with and figure out what they are comfortable with.
Yes.
Personally, I actually don't like phone calls. As you pointed out, some people don't like phone calls. I like to actually meet up. So if you want to talk to me, let's schedule that coffee. Let's schedule those drinks after work or whatever it may be. And really, it was finding that similar partner that led me now to my husband. And it's really getting into the details of, how does my partner or potential partner like to be communicated to? How do they feel respected? And getting into those details versus just thinking that, the way I like to be treated is how everyone likes to be treated.
Absolutely, 100%.
And I mean, going one step further, if you can build strong communication skills at the front end of a relationship, my hope, as you just gave an example, is those strong communication skills will exist during a marriage. And the stronger the communication skills, the better I see families weather certain storms. Because as a family law attorney, yes, I see them going through divorces. Yes, 100%. But I also see families contemplating getting remarried or married for the first time or contemplating a big life change, which could include children. And maybe the goal is not to actually get divorced, but how do we utilize legal tools to protect the family structure? And if couples are unable to communicate, that is always, at least on my side, a red flag of, oh goodness, we have a lot of work to do.
Definitely. And we talked before the show started about the importance of prenuptials. And that's something that I recommend all of my clients. It's not even about the money piece. It's just about knowing that you're going to be protected. It's insurance, but it's also to know that you're being protected through and after a marriage. If it doesn't work out, you're basically running a business. Like the family is like a small business, just think of it as an LLC. When you get married, you're building something with a big foundation. So the love piece is just one small aspect of being married. It's also, how do you actually live together? Can you get along inside of the house? How do you communicate about, do you want to go out often or do you want to stay in? Who's going to make the dinner? Who's going to do the shopping? Who's going to clean up the dog poop in the backyard without one person getting resentful that they're always in charge of it? Some people say, okay, one person's in charge of the stuff inside the house, the other person's in charge of what's outside of the house. But the other day I said to my husband, I'm like, I want to switch roles. Like, I don't want to be doing the paperwork anymore. He's like, well, do you want to mow the grass? I'm like, no, I don't want to do that either. And he starts going through all of his tasks. I'm like, yeah, I actually don't want to do any of those things. Let's find something else. So you need to be flexible and you need to have a sense of humor, by the way, because you're never going to get through a marriage if you cannot laugh at yourself and with your partner. But if I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she'd recently moved in with her boyfriend, and they had like this issue because she left something out on the counter, and her boyfriend got upset because it's a little OCD, and he was like, this is not going to work. And so you don't want to feel like you're walking on eggshells in your home either. So listen, I'm a big proponent for live together for a little while before you get married. I always say, like, have an end date in mind. Like, let's do this for 3 months and then get engaged, kind of thing. But literally, if you move in with somebody and you can tell, yikes, this is not going to work, that's the answer. Love doesn't trump everything. It's love and it's everything else. And that communication piece is so important.
I love that you brought up the prenup and really the fact that love is definitely important in a marriage and in a relationship and in a healthy romantic relationship, but it's not the end all be all. And that's why we advocate time and time again. And you'll actually see us at some of the wedding expos in town here in Charlotte, where we want to encourage couples to have what we call premarital legal counseling. I know a lot of couples will do premarital counseling. Maybe they'll do it through their church or religious institution. Maybe they'll do it with a family therapist. But I highly advise that couples also entertain the premarital legal counseling that each of them that would go through with their respective attorneys to really understand what their legal rights are as a single person, as well as when they get married. I can't tell you how many people come to my office contemplating divorce, not realizing back on the day of that wedding, they assumed all of these legal and financial obligations that blew their minds.
Yeah.
I've had more than one client say, oh, well, I thought because we kept our bank accounts separate, neither of us had a claim to the other party's monies in their separate bank account. That's not how family law works.
No.
And if I can tell my clients before they even get married how the law applies to this situation and how their obligations and legal rights will change when they say I do, then that opens the conversation not only for healthier communication and understanding between the couple themselves, but also more importantly, okay, if you don't like how those laws work, if you don't like how the law would apply should something happen and the two of you divorce, then we can have a conversation months before the date of the wedding so that the couple can determine what they want, how they want property to be owned during the marriage, how they want responsibilities to be split or ownership and debts to be handled. And then, yes, should a separation or divorce occur, how certain things are handled. And I can't tell you how often I have had couples engage in the negotiations of a prenup, a premarital agreement, and they learn things about the other party that they wouldn't have otherwise learned. And I think that information with that added communication just strengthens the foundation of a healthy marriage if they do end up getting married and end up with that prenup.
Yeah. And then the other really important thing is a lot of women don't know what's going on with the finances in the household. I really urge people to know all of the passwords for all of the accounts and to really understand the monies. And you just need to know because, yeah, that money is yours as well. So you don't want to have to do this deep dive, forensic, financial dive during a divorce proceeding necessarily if you don't have to, where, the woman especially just feels just so stuck, and it's a very, very scary place. And it's the reason why a lot of women don't leave abusive relationships, because they don't understand that they are able to have, some of that money.
Building relationships is a natural part of life. But how does the law affect those relationships? Do you want to marry your significant other, but have cold feet from the many divorce horror stories out there? Are you preparing for a custody battle against your ex? That is where Modern Legal comes in. We offer education and knowledge about the law when it affects the relationships near and dear to your heart. To learn more about how family law affects your family, book a consultation with an attorney of our Modern Legal team by visiting our website, emailing us, or calling us at 704-286-6302. Check out the information about Modern Legal Services at modernlegalnc.com.
The more information just like if you're, again, back to the company thing, you should know your financials. You should know all the different things, like figure out who's in charge of what, have family meetings, right? It's easier to work harder on the marriage, I'm sure you would agree, than to get a divorce.
Yes.
It's just so much easier. Put the time and effort in. I don't know about you, but the number one thing that I hear from people about why their marriages don't work is that they grew apart.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at, I look at people all the time, and I always think, how did they get together? What was their love story like? Their origin story, and how do you get from that excited, in love, fabulous feeling to the end where they're like, I'm done, I'm finished with this marriage, and I want out. What steps didn't happen along the way, and how can you ensure that those steps do happen so that you don't get a divorce? Even if you're so different, you can still figure it out. As long as there isn't abuse and whatnot. Now, sometimes people just say, we just kind of timed out, like the season was over. And listen, I can respect that. People do change, but I think the growing apart thing, that can be worked on.
Yeah. Well, and the growing apart, I would say, is an indicator of there's been some lack of communication, lack of voicing what they want in the relationship. And sometimes I've seen this as well, that parties will be contemplating divorce because they felt almost forced into this relationship or marriage, not by their own desires or even the desires of their spouse, but by family and societal pressures.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the couple will recognize, years later, we're good friends, but we weren't supposed to be married. And that's fine. Then, let's move forward with the divorce. Let you start your next chapter in any way you want. Yeah. On the flip side, you do have those couples who want this relationship to work, are in love, want to make things, the marriage, a marriage that they had always hoped for. Mm-hmm. But if they stop talking and they start sleeping in separate bedrooms and they treat the relationship more like a roommate situation.
Yes.
And they aren't asking the questions of, how was your day, or checking in, or even going on a date, an occasional date where it allows for what my mom would call bonding time. Yeah. If there's no bonding time, then how can we expect a marriage to sustain 5, 10, 15, 20 years when they're not bonding, when the couple is not bonding with each other.
Yeah. It's so interesting bringing up moms. My mom said to me, make sure you have a Saturday night date. Just get a sitter and book her for every single Saturday night when you've got kids. And so I did. I just listened to her. So Saturday night, Kevin and I always went out, even if it was just, we were so exhausted, just dinner and a movie, just like super chill. But it was our night to get dressed up. The kids see it's good for mom and dad to go out. They always loved having the babysitter. It was so fun for them. And it was good for us. I just think that couples often stop dating when they get married. So get out of the house and do fun things, go mini
with
golf
each other.
with each other, go for a tour in your city, do something that that is out of the norm. It's fun to do new things, check out Axios Charlotte or whatever city you're in and look at the new things that are happening, what exhibits in town, what music is happening. Even if it's just like, take a stroll in the inner city section. It's just fun to do something new.
Yeah, it is. And when I am thinking about the premarital legal counseling, it's always interesting because of course I'm thinking as a lawyer, I'm thinking of how do we own property? How do we own, different responsibilities? And I'll be honest, with a prenup, you can get as creative as you want. And there are provisions that state parties shall go on a date at least once a month. That
really?
The parties, create a certain bank account that they then contribute to during the relationship. And that is their vacation and or going out fund. And we've seen all these different creative techniques that couples can agree on even before they get married. So once again, they can have a marriage that is structured and legally structured, if you will, in a way that they want their marriage to look moving forward.
It's like an accountability plan.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Yeah, that's smart. I've never heard that before. That's really brilliant.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've even had, I have a prenup and I didn't even think to put it in there. But neither me or my husband like to cook. So I feel like we should have put something in there that states after a certain point, we will hire a chef and we will hire someone to do the cooking for us.
That is literally my one dream.
And see, so these topics, come into conversation and I have seen it as well, going to our earlier point about things that come up when individuals are thinking about separation or divorce. And one thing does come up about feeling resentment of, I always have to do X. I always have to mow the lawn or do the laundry and all this, that, and the other. And it's interesting because, and this has been more of a training I did as a business owner, but there's always a third option is what the point of the training was. And so I can bring that to this scenario where, yes, wife can mow the grass or husband can mow the grass, but there is a third option. You can hire someone to mow the grass. Maybe you have an older child that can mow the grass. Maybe you have a neighbor child that can mow the grass. Like there's always a third option. And unless you talk about it and unless you work through that potential source of resentment, then you will grow further apart. And in a way, we need to recognize that everyone has a role in a separation. And I get it. I would say 99.9% of my clients will say, well, they, meaning the other person in this relationship did X, Y, Z, and it's their fault. And sometimes I have to coach my clients into saying, okay, well, where's the self-accountability here? What are we accountable for?
Right.
Okay, you knew before you even got married. For example, I knew before I got married that my husband doesn't like to cook.
Right.
So I can't sit here saying, well, I always have to cook because I actually don't. Right. I know my husband won't cook. And if I'm tired of cooking, then we have to find that third option.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I have a client and he is really looking for someone that loves to host friends and family in his home and make elaborate meals and bring in different wines and things like that. And he's really looking for someone that wants that lifestyle. So he's definitely an extrovert and he doesn't need another extrovert, but he does need somebody that can meld into that lifestyle and feel relaxed around it. And that's his number one thing is, what does her social circles look like? can we meld together? Does she want to grow intellectually? What does she like to do? So even if, I set him up with someone and he was like very attracted to her and was really vibing with her, if those other elements aren't there, it's not going to be a match for the long haul. And so when I'm doing my matchmaking, I really, really want to examine, what lifestyle do you want? What do you want to retire one day to the beach? Like, what is your, 20-year plan trajectory look like? I had a client once and he said, please find me somebody who wants to move with me to this, 55 plus retirement community in South Carolina. I found her, and they sent me a picture of them at his new home there. And I was like, okay, this is such a miracle. He also wanted somebody who would like be affectionate. Like even after the first date, he's like, I'd love to hold hand with somebody on the first date. I'm like, that is really, that's tough, for somebody to be, that excited and demonstrative on a first date. But somehow or other, we figured out who it was, and they ended up, getting married. And it brings me so much joy. So I would say to all the singles that are out there listening to this, write your list up that's important to you. Figure out like your long-term goals and dreams, and then make sure that when you're selecting, because that is really what it is. It doesn't just happen like lightning. You are choosing, you are selecting who you want to be with. And hopefully, it works out for both parties, but really focus on, is this person in it for the long haul? Does this person also want the same dreams that I have? Because if they don't, you're going to have to readjust your dreams without resentment, right? And then also, there might be something that person brings to the table that's even more exciting than what you had even thought. So stay open to all possibilities.
Stay open to all possibilities, build those skills, build that communication. Think about a prenup if you're deciding to get married, and learning about your legal obligation and rights that change when you get married. My hope really is to, in a way, work myself out of a job, because I would love to draft a lot more prenups and hopefully reduce the divorce rate that we see ever so high in our society. Laurie, thank you so much for being on the Legal Lounge today. This has been so interesting. Before I let you go, where could a listener find you to learn more about your matchmaking services?
Yeah, I'm on all the socials at Carolinas Matchmaker. And my website is carolinasmatchmaker.com. You'll see my face on the homepage. It's free to fill out a profile on my website. If you're a match for one of my clients, it would be a complimentary introduction for you. But if you want to be proactive and hire me, we can have that conversation as well. So lots of different ways of being involved. I do coaching, matchmaking. I'll do some events here and there. So lots of fun ways to be involved.
Well, thank you, Laurie. And slight plug for all my clients who I have already assisted getting a divorce, and they're possibly looking back into the dating field, if you will.
Yeah.
Laurie is my go-to girl to help you out.
Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our discussion. To learn more about me and the Modern Legal team, go to our website, modernlegalnc.com, or check out the links in our show notes to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also call us at 704-286-6302. If you have been intrigued by the conversation and would like us to continue our discussions, please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. See you next time.